So I'm just saying, I feel really bad, we'll see you there, and we're just here Monday. What time is it?
5 o'clock.
It's possible, it's not like. She'll ask me just. Starts at the beginning. Her mom's. Okay. Check. Yeah, it's gone. Hopefully. Oh, check, there we go. The system is on. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joe Zadowski, the District Administrator. Thank you for being here and joining us for today's Reconsideration Committee meeting. I'd like to thank all the committee members. Just joking a little bit, I know a couple of our teachers were just here Monday night for a different committee meeting, Brian as well. It's a busy time of year, so thank you everyone for making time out of your schedules. So the meeting has been called to order. We'll start by doing a roll call and an introduction of committee members. Committee members, if we could maybe just go around the table and introduce yourself along with what your relationship is to the school district. That'd be great. So Mrs. Mopson, if we could start with you, go ahead.
Sure, I'm Mrs. Mopson, Susan Mopson. I'm a high school assistant principal, and a parent in the district.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nikki Schmidt. I am an alumni of Menominee and parents of 2 in the district.
Thank you.
Mark Winterfeld, and I'm a parent in the district.
I'm Erin Kennedy. I'm a first grade teacher at Wakanda and a parent in the district.
Brian Seglin, Assistant Superintendent of Instruction, and I have 3 children in the district.
I'm Kim Navarro. I'm the library media specialist for the district, and I'm also a parent in the district.
I'm Jenny Barron, high school English teacher, and I'm a parent in the district as well.
Emily Hines, and I have a 4th grade son in the district.
Jillian Sturk, and I have 2 kids that graduated from the district.
Excellent. Thank you very much, committee members. And I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I had 3 kids in the district as well. Okay, so to review the process, there are agendas printed, and we're going to follow the same process today that we did just a few weeks ago. We will have our reconsideration request presented by Mrs. Pillman, and then at that point, we will entertain a motion from the committee as to whether or not public comments will be allowed tonight. We have received a number of written public comments, which have been shared with all the committee members. And then at that point, the committee can deliberate or decide what they would like to do moving forward. So the 2 requests that are under consideration tonight are books presented by Mrs. Pillman, Too Bright to See by Kyle Lukoff, and Julian is a Mermaid by Jessica Love. And committee members, any questions before we turn it over to Mrs. Pillman for her presentation? Okay, Mrs. Pillman, you're up then. Go ahead, welcome.
Hello, thank you. I'm Josie Pillman and I live in Knapp, so that's part of the Menominee School District. Dr. Zadowski and members of the Reconsideration Committee. I'll first talk about this book and then afterwards I'll do a little presentation on the other book. So this first one is called Too Bright to See by author Kyle Lukoff. So Wisconsin Statute 118.13 is regarding pupil discrimination is prohibited. It reads, except as provided in S 120.13.13, no person shall be denied admission to any public school or be denied participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be discriminated against in any curricular, extracurricular, pupil services, recreational, or other program or activity because of the person's sex, race, religion, national origin, ancestry, creed, pregnancy, marital or parental status, sexual orientation, or physical, mental, emotional, or learning disability. Then 2 says each school board shall develop written policies and procedures to implement this section. So I've abbreviated this statute, and the reason I've read it is it's been pointed out to me several times as reasons why the school district is running scared about confronting or talking about things like this that I'm asking to be removed, for example.
Mrs. Pillman, please just keep your comments to the materials at hand and why you'd like to see them removed, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've abbreviated the statute as it gets into details of how to implement it. However, the meaning is clear. If discrimination is going to be, they should understand what it is. If in fact that is what this reconsideration meeting is attempting to do. Discrimination is the act of making unjustified distinction between people based on groups. That is not what the removal of this book is about, but I am in fact asking for the protection of children based on their group or family belief system. Statute 118.13 is talking about not discriminating against a student. This book is about indoctrinating a student or planting seeds of doubt or confusion into the minds of young children. This book is about actually advocating for sin or celebrating it. Children in Knapp Elementary School should not even be having conversations about such topics. It is never age appropriate to speak of immorality or to normalize it. Every aspect of the LGBTQ worldview is only evil. So this book, Too Bright to See, is a novel that champions and celebrates the life of a young girl entering middle school who decides to cut her hair and change her clothes to male clothes. She pretends she is now a boy. This decision is championed and celebrated in the book. Let me read a quote from page 172. And I quote, "As far as I know, Bug will be our first transgender student, but the administration and teaching staff operate under the assumption that any child could be transgender or identify in some other way that they haven't shared with us. Some of our restrooms are gender segregated, but we have 5 single-stall restrooms evenly spaced throughout the building. Bug can use whichever ones he thinks are best. Remember, she's a she, but they're saying he. I'll make sure the name Bug appears on the attendance charts, and in case his legal name is also on there, I'll let his teachers know how to keep that confidential," unquote. This book is not about helping a mentally disabled student, for example, manage life in a middle school. This book is about teaching the lie that feelings identify your gender, and that affirming that lie and calling it good. No human being can change their gender. The healthiest thing one can do for a gender-confused child is to tell him the truth. Teach him about self-acceptance and being content with his unchangeables, even celebrating the way he is made. This builds character. Never tell him that if he feels like another gender, he can pretend he is that gender and take steps to change. He never can. Trying to change can lead to mutilation, sterility, mental illness, depression, even suicide. Not good. I am asking this Reconsideration Committee to give me the courtesy to support your reasons for retaining this book in our libraries, if that's what you're deciding. The Menominee Public Library Reconsideration Board cited various awards because this book is also in the Menominee Public Library. This appalls me that some library experts are giving such accolades to such wicked teaching. Why are library media experts, why are they afraid to recognize the dangers of LGBTQ worldview for the sake of our children? I ask you, please defend this book before you vote. Tell me any reason why the book should remain in the Knapp Elementary School. I cannot think of one. Rather than me only criticizing what you do, I think it is valuable for me to give you some positive suggestions. One idea would be to replace this book with a book with wholesome teaching. Just Ducky, I've mentioned that one before, by Barbara Anderson would be an example of such a book. A second thing to do would be for Dr. Zadowski and Mr. Brian Seguin to invite a speaker to come to talk to the staff and students about the painful results of buying into this transgender idea. Such a person would be Luca Jo Ropoli. She is a woman who believed the lie and became a transgender male for 20 years. When she saw the light and was transformed by the gospel, she began to share her story that others might know the pain and sorrow she went through. Her message would be a valuable deterrent for gender-confused kids considering transitioning. This kind of education helps to give our children a healthy, wholesome look at human sexuality. It also equips them with truth so that they can make wise decisions as they grow older and gain discernment. Little kids don't have discernment. It is never against the law to teach our children to do the right thing. Speaking the truth is truly an act of love. Removing books that lie is another act of love. It is not against Wisconsin Statute 118.13 to remove this book. This book is not about discriminating against some students. It is about indoctrination. So I'm pleading with you, please vote to remove this book from the Knapp Elementary School for the sake of our precious children. Dr. Zadowski suggested that I go on and share the second book here.
Mrs. Pillman, if you want to go ahead and take a second to collect your thoughts for the second book. I failed to read some of the policy as we got started, and I know you had just requested that the committee share information about their votes and such, and I do want to point out that the committee members all were provided not only the written notices provided by the community, but they also have been provided access to the materials, reviews and such. And I know committee members have spent a bunch of time reviewing the materials, and we appreciate that. I would also like to point out that district policy does call out objectives for the selection of materials for the library centers. And the four basic objectives, one would be to provide materials that enrich and support the curriculum, taking into consideration the varied interest, abilities, and maturity levels of the students served. To provide materials that will stimulate growth and factual knowledge, literary appreciation, aesthetic values, and ethical standards. Providing materials on opposing sides of controversial issues so that students, under guidance, may develop the practice of critical analysis. And then also to provide materials representative of the many religions, ethnic, and cultural groups, and their contributions to our American heritage. So that comes out of board policy, and I know that committee members consider those items as well. But now that I gave you a little bit of a break, if you could go ahead and move on to your second book, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. So this second book is called Julian is a Mermaid. It's by Jessica Love. It is a board book, so it's again geared to an even younger level of myths. This is a chapter book that was in the Knapp Elementary School. So this is a board book, so that's kind of geared toward non-readers or very low-level readers. So it's a lot about the pictures that are in there, but it's another book in the Knapp Elementary School library that champions changing who you are rather than teaching contentment. It makes something very dangerous into a fun sport for a young child, all the while the adult in the child's life is applauding rather than correcting. The book is a picture book targeting young children, not written as a fairy tale, but rather as a possibility. Again, this plants seeds of confusion or doubt into the impressionable minds of young children. The book intentionally tries to increase the number of gender-confused children as they mature. That's my observation. It should be removed from the library and replaced by wholesome books like Just Ducky by Barbara Anderson, that same one I showed before. The community of Menominee would like our teachers to have healthy, wholesome, and accurate media to teach our precious children age-appropriate truth about human sexuality. Please have the courage to stand alone and vote to remove this book. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pillman. Anything else you'd like to add to your presentation today? And I do want to also point out that Mrs. Pillman was kind enough to send in background material, including her narrative. I know committee members received that a few days ago and had a chance to review it. But is there anything else you'd like to add today?
I'm just, I'd like to say, and I don't know how it's gonna go, but I know the last time I heard absolutely no deliberation by the members of the committee. And that's one of the things that would be very helpful for me. I would really appreciate hearing, brought up a lot of points why I'd like to see it removed. And I don't know, like I said, how they have the option to or not, but I would really like to hear your minds, your thinking of why you are gonna vote the way you're gonna vote. So that's all I'll add. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, moving on then, the committee members did receive 13 community communications, and I'm sure those have all been reviewed. At this point, would committee members like to open it up for comments from the public? We did receive, I think it's 10 or 11 requests to speak. I have noticed that a number of these are repetitive from what has been shared with the board already. It's really at the committee's discretion if you'd like to open up the public comment tonight.
I wouldn't be opposed to public comment, but I would prefer if we hear comment from those we have not already had an opportunity. If they've submitted something in writing, can we decline those and allow comment from those we have not heard from?
If you're going to allow public comment, I would suggest allowing it from everyone. I think it could be problematic to pick and choose.
Okay, that's it.
At this time, I would propose a motion that we adopt Rule 187 for handling public comment, similar to what our board uses.
We have a motion, is there a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Any questions, any comments? Okay, committee members, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so public comments will open up. We will limit public comments to 3 minutes. We do ask people, please try not to be repetitive. People are giving up their evenings here. And we certainly would like to hear from community members, but there's no need to repeat points over and over. So we will start, we'll start with the one that was turned in initially. We'll start with Mike Cooper. And Mike, if you could come up to the front there and actually if we could pull both microphones up towards Mike and then turn them on. Yeah, I don't think you need to do that, but turn them on so that the lights are on. And then after Mike goes, Colton Cheneke will be next. And then I'll try to make sure we know who's coming up. So Mike, if you could go ahead and we'll give you 3 minutes. Thanks, Mike.
Mike Cooper, 24627 453rd Street here in Menominee. And first of all, I would like to thank Josie for this stalwart dedication to working to protect the future of students who attend the schools in this district. We're here to discuss this book because the school district has usurped the powers of parents of the district and then has been doing anything but ensuring that parents are aware that children have access to books of this nature. Multiple studies have been shown that pushing hormone treatment and surgery does not eliminate the psychological conflict that gender dysphoria causes. The view of those who went ahead with conversion and regret it is also something of a topic that should be discussed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooper. Next we have Colton, and then after Colton we have Tina Lee. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having us speak again today. It's been not too long since the last time I was here, only a couple of months, and
Colton, I'm sorry, if you could please state your name and address.
Oh, yes. Colton Cheneke, 1021 Fifth Avenue East in Menominee. And so, not a whole lot of time, and yet so much has happened, and I think that these patterns are important to be noted. On November 19th, 2022, Club Q in Colorado resulted in the deaths of 5 people and countless other injuries in a very clear homophobic and transphobic hate crime. Last week, Monday, an LGBTQ club in Minneapolis, there was a man yelling homophobic slurs and waving around a gun. Also, this past week, several domestic terrorists shot up several power stations in North Carolina, which was potentially and alluded to in protests at drag shows and left tens of thousands of people without power. These messages and narratives lead to violence and discrimination and further action. And if you think that's exaggerating, let's look at 1933, when the Institute of Sexology was one of the very first instances in the Holocaust, and that was the burning of thousands and thousands of books related to sexuality and gender. This is not an over-exaggeration. These actions lead to violence and lead to further harm. And also, as a mental health provider, I think it's really important to not be bastardizing science and to really note the fact that so much of the strain and mental stress that happens for people who do transition is because of this discrimination and hatred and all of this messaging. And so people who are really saying, oh, what about like all these problems, really just need to look in a mirror for the solution as to why trans kids are suffering. And I think that that's really important to state. I also think it's just really interesting that this repeated pattern of behavior just really is so clearly a harassing attempt towards queer and trans kids in the community. And the fact that it's even given the tolerance to have a platform here is already incredibly graceful. And I think that that should just be noted. And so I think that we have an obligation to protect our kids. And some people just are really confused, I'll use that word, on what that looks like. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Tina Lee, and then Danny Geisling. Tina.
Hi everyone, I'll introduce myself again. So my address, I'm Tina Lee. I live at East 4588, 453rd Avenue in Menominee. I'm a professor of anthropology at UW Stout and also have 2 children in the district, a 5th grader and a 7th grader. So as a cultural anthropologist, someone who studies human nature in all times and places, and I think I said this last time, I can tell you that in almost every culture we have evidence for, there are folks who do not conform to a gender binary. This is the human norm. This is not something that's sinful that you can push. This is something that exists among most human populations. We know there are already students in our district and families in our district that have LGBTQIA+ members and transgender members, and students with those identities and families with those identities deserve to see themselves represented in literature. I read both of these books. They're lovely. They're beautiful. Too Bright to See Made Me Cry. The Profound Acceptance by a family member of a child who is discovering themselves and figuring out what they are. And I know Colton alluded to this, but I'll just say it again. All of the evidence we have is that children have mental health problems like depression and maybe attempting suicide if they are not accepted, not if they question. The questioning is not the issue. It's whether you're accepted, allowed to transition. And I just want to say that as a parent, I'm very much in support of having my children who don't necessarily identify within this community to have access to these books so that they know how to be accepting of friends and people that they go to school with. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Next up is Danny, and then Hannah Lammer.
Hello, my name is Danny Gissing. I live at 1710 West 5th Street, right across from the high school. So I really appreciate that you allowed us to talk. I sent a long letter supporting these books again, so I'm just going to do this announcement. So the first book, Gus identified as he throughout the book. And so one of the things I really want you to do on the head, and I put in the letter, is that we need to eliminate these false narratives, and I want to rewrite these around no myths or lies and reframe this narrative and highlight the public reviews of these narratives. So Too Bright to See is for male children. I understand that, but some people have hard reading levels. So this tells a story about Gus, who's a parent boy, who is in a haunted house and lets a ghost is trying to convey the message to Gus. And spoiler alert, it's his uncle, who is a gay man who died unexpectedly. So this book talks about grief, healing, and self-acceptance. These are the themes of the book. And so that's Goodreads reviews rate this book 4.15 out of 5. The reviews were really impactful and brought tears to my eyes. Julian is a Mermaid is a book that when I looked at it, it made me cry. It's about a boy who fell in love with the idea of a mermaid, and a grandparent supported this. And so let's read the description for the tears to my eyes and know the impact of familial support and self-acceptance of a person's sense of safety. The author, Love, mentioned the inspiration of this book was for former partner was unable to partner's brother was unable to transition to the authentic self until the 50s because they did not have that support and safety. I work as a student support advisor, and I have many students who identify as non-binary and trans. When they come to college, hearing their backstory, this trauma around religion, as well as being in school districts that don't support really important. So lastly, I want to think that I would like to ask the committee to put halt on removal of books around gender identity for everyone's time and consideration, since this is the last recommendation. But as a last reconsideration means so, community members will continue to show up, and we will use our voices to support these books. Thank you, and please keep this book.
Thank you, Danny, and I think we can all say without a doubt that Danny wins the most festive sweater contest tonight. Very well done. Okay, next is Hannah Lammer, and then I believe this says Pete McHenry. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Pete here? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Hannah.
Hi, folks. Thanks again for hearing us. My name is Hannah Lammer, and I live at 2216 11th Avenue East in Menominee, and I also graduated from Menominee Schools. Here we are again with the books. I wrote a letter, and I'd like to highlight a couple sections from that, not all of them. I really strongly support keeping these books under reconsideration, Too Bright to See, and Julian is a Mermaid in the school district for general use. While the content of these books have been repeatedly referred to as containing myths and lies, numerous experts in anthropology, we have an expert right here, curriculum design, psychology, and medical fields have testified to the contrary. These books are also highly rated, like Danny said, and reviewed by educational professionals and library professionals. None of these books even come close to meeting actual criteria for inappropriateness or obscenity. These are simply words the complainant is using to push their own moral agenda. LGBTQIA+ identities are only myths and lies in the world they live in, not in reality. I'm here to ensure that the futures of LGBTQIA youth are safe, happy, and affirming. I strongly believe this includes an opportunity for students to read about identities that reflect who they are, as well as help others develop empathy for difference. Last time I was here, I chatted a lot about the harmful effects of banning books, and I also this time provided a bunch of Supreme Court cases that I thought might be relevant. I'd like to share one or two of those. Free access to information, especially in public schools, is the bedrock of a functioning democracy. The First Amendment supports this notion. In addition to fostering respect for our own bodies and the bodies of others, books on sexuality are First Amendment protected speech. To be obscene, a book would have to lack serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value, and given the numerous awards they've received, they provide immense literary and cultural value, and they're not obscene. Let's see, which case do I want to cite here? Let's do this one. In Tinker v. Des Moines Independent Community School District in 1969, the Supreme Court held that students don't shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. In 1982, the Board of Education Island Trees Union Free School District versus PICO, the court noted that school libraries are especially appropriate for the recognition of First Amendment rights of students, including the right to access information and ideas. The ruling stated that local school boards may not remove books from library shelves simply because they dislike the ideas contained in those books and seek by their removal to, quote, prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion. Policy and precedent show us that the school's primary interest in making decisions about books and media should fulfill an educational purpose, not to promote specific morals or viewpoints. Book banning based on morality has been a favorite tactic of dictators and fascists. Most of us learned, as Colton said, that the Nazis in Germany began their assault on minorities through book banning and eventually book burning. It is no coincidence that these book banning efforts to protect children, including this one, have a nefarious end goal of blocking any advances in civil rights for minoritized communities. I do acknowledge that parents and guardians have a right to supervise their own children's reading. Individual families are free to keep their children as sheltered as they like. However, they are not free to extend that mandate beyond their family or impose their supervision on other people's children. Thank you, and please keep the books in the libraries.
Thank you, Hannah. Next up is Pete, and then after Pete will be Jessica Graham. Welcome, Pete.
Yeah, Pete McHenry. I live in Boyceville, Wisconsin. I grew up in Wisconsin. I was born in the southern part of Wisconsin and was raised on a farm. And later went to UW Stout where I had achieved a undergraduate in industrial education. And grew up in the country, out in the country near Boyceville. I want to bring up a topic of a kindergarten teacher in Madison that was required by the school curriculum to present readings to his class that were against his moral values. He refused to do it, and the school had somebody else come in at the time that the reading should take place, and had that person read it while he stood by. And later, a couple of years later, they terminated his position. And so the struggle was very real for him. And I know it is very real for all of you, and I pray for all of you in this struggle. If anybody is in a position where they can be an intercessor, as this person in Madison was, I would encourage you to do that for the benefit of the children. If we have treasurers, we have teachers, we have all kinds of people here that are involved professionally with our children. And we need to protect our children. And I would like to encourage each one of us, if we have the ability to step in and protect our children from what is not truthful, that we should just go ahead and do that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Pete. Next is Jessica Graham, and after Jessica will be Kelly Jo Hayes.
Hi, I'm Jessica Graham. I'm the Library Technology Media Integrator for the K-5 grades here in the school district. I did submit something in writing, so I understand you don't want things to be duplicated, so I will try to skip around a little bit and just highlight some of the things that I put on here. I did read both of the books and I found them both to be lovely and too great to see. This child doesn't come to the conclusion that he's transgender until the very end. The raw struggle that this character goes through is endearing. It is not easy, and he doesn't take it lightly. There is nothing in either of these books that advocates for sin or evil. Nothing leads to suicidal thoughts or tendencies. In fact, it's the opposite, because in both books, these characters are embraced for who they are, and it's a very happy outcome in both books. It's already been stated that both books have won awards. When you look at the collection development policy for the school district and you take these two books, there's nothing in either book that violates anything in that policy. I don't see a reason why they should be removed. And I would like to reiterate again that the library does provide age-appropriate access to both fiction and nonfiction books, but we don't dictate what is or is not okay for a child to read. That is up to the grown-ups in that household. This can mean that a grown-up in the household might not want their child to read books on a certain topic, and we can put a note in that student's file, but when you take away the choices for all the other families, that crosses into censorship. So I would advocate that we keep both of these books in the school system library. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Next is Kelly Jo Hayes, and then after Kelly is, Jorgensen?
Yes. Arlette.
Arlette Jorgensen, thank you.
My name is Kelly Jo Hayes and I reside at 570th Street in Wheeler, Wisconsin. At the last reconsideration meeting, I was very disheartened at the speed in which the vote was called for and taken on the books before for reconsideration by Mrs. Coleman. The message that was sent, in my opinion, is that this was nothing more than an exercise of placation to the public and that you had arrived with your minds already made up on what should happen, and that isn't the case tonight. The fundamental principles that this nation was built on are being called into question in this meeting. No matter your belief system, this nation, its constitution, and its laws are based on Judeo-Christian values, laws, and morals as found in the Holy Bible. This is relevant in that this book, the Bible, also speaks to gender, and it clearly tells us that in the beginning, on the sixth day, God created male and female, man and woman, two genders. The basic truth is the foundation for why we're here, asking you to remove from general consumption a book that presents as truth to our impressionable children ideas that go against basic principles we are founded on in basic biology. We have a moral obligation to be sure that what is in our library shelves is true and age appropriate. Freedom of speech and all of its parameters apply to your obligation here, just as much as they do if you were in a public space and have the urge to cry fire when there is no fire. That is not freedom of speech any more than leaving books spreading misinformation to our children and the library shelves is freedom of speech. These thoughts and ideas, these books are still available to parents and families who want to explore them with their children. So discrimination is not the issue. Social and political pressures do not define truth, nor should they drive the decisions that we make in supporting and upholding our fundamental principles and rule of law. Despite the tendencies and sways of our culture, we do not have the luxury of deciding which words of truth to accept and which to reject. We have a moral obligation to our children to protect them and to be sure that the information they are receiving is true. I too am asking you to remove the books from the library shelves as an act of upholding our fundamental and moral principles and basic biology.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Next, we have Arlette Jorgensen, and then the last speaker will be Kathleen Greenman. And I'm sorry for getting your name wrong.
That's all right. It's nothing difficult. My name is Arlette Jorgensen. My address is N7391 County Road F, Menominee, Wisconsin. Discussing one's gender is a highly personal item and should be between a child and a parent. Teachers and school administrators have no business interfering with a family matter. None. This board's decision to allow these types of books in our school libraries is equal to grooming. And I hate to use that word, but that's how I see it. It is wrong to impose anybody's here religious beliefs, no matter if they're secular, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever. It is not your business to impose those things on other people's children. You, by bringing those books to them, you're asking that child to deny the faith that their parents are teaching them. I hope you can see that. Adults can do whatever they want, anything, I don't care. But children, it is not your right to impose other people's religious beliefs on other people's children. And when it comes down to the bottom common denominator, I see this as a violation of their First Amendment rights. You, not maybe proselytizing, but you are trying to get them to deny their faith and believe in something else. This is between parents and children, not the school library and the books and the teachers and the administrators. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last speaker tonight, unless there's anybody else that wants to bring up a forum right now, the last speaker will be Kathleen Raymond.
My name is Kathleen Raymond. I live at 1905 3rd Avenue Northeast here in Menominee. I am the pastor of First Congregational United Church of Christ, and I speak here today as a pastor. I didn't realize before I came how important it was going to be for my voice to be here, because I take deeply seriously and have throughout my life and my vocation the call of the gospel that Josie and many other people here today have cited their commitment to. But I understand it very differently. I am a cisgender woman, married to a woman, who came out in my early 40s after years of having heterosexuality enforced on me, years of the opinions of the vast majority of the society telling me how my life was to be. I have cared my whole life about the protection of children. And the children I've known, the children I know in my own congregation who have struggled to come to terms with their own understanding of their sexual orientation and their gender identities, against a huge wave, not just of silencing, but of active bullying and hatred that has translated by those kids into self-loathing and shame, to watch them attempt to find space for their truth, which I believe is the truth that God finds sacred, that is sacred in our tradition. I want to address the issue that's been raised tonight and is often raised about grooming and about normalization. I promise every one of you that there is no child who is comfortable in the body or the orientation that they were born with and are being raised with, who will read Julian is a Mermaid and decide to be trans, or who will read some other book and decide to be gay. That's not how it works. What will happen is that a child who may find their experience of their gender uncomfortably different from what everyone, including their parents, is telling them it should be, will read this book and think, maybe I am not alone. Maybe I'm not a monster. Maybe I have a right to be alive. Maybe there is language that describes my experience. And a child who does feel comfortable, in the gendered body that they were given will read that story, and maybe they will be able to experience a little more space in their imaginations and their hearts for the possibility that people different from them have a right to exist and can be loving, beautiful people. I have read Julian is a Mermaid to my grandchildren, and it is a lovely, delightful book. It is not going to turn them one way or the other, but it does help them have a better sense that their gender fluid parent is a lovely person.
Thank you, Kathleen. That was your time. Thank you. Okay, just one more check. Did anybody else fill out a form? Okay then, we will move on. Thank you, everyone, and I know we said this at our last hearing, just very what am I trying to say? It's very encouraging that our community can have this conversation and that it can be so cordial. Certainly there's different viewpoints, and I just want to applaud everyone and thank everyone for being here and sharing your thoughts. And I know people have very passionate feelings on both sides of this issue, and for our community to be able to do this and have a very nice atmosphere, very pleasant, thank you. That's something we can all be very proud of. Okay, so now we talk about deliberation and action by the committee. Committee members, at this time, you're welcome to ask questions of other committee members, of Mrs. Pillman. If you have questions or if you want to share your thoughts, that's fine. That's encouraged. And then if anybody is interested in making a motion to make a determination on these books, that would be appropriate as well. So at this time, we'll open up for any committee members who might have any comments. Nicole, could you please use your microphone? Thank you.
Is that, okay. I understand your desire, those have asked for us to justify why we decide the way we do, and I appreciate that. Also, I want you guys to know, while I may not justify my choices, we are provided all the comments, all the information. The books themselves, we have gotten all of that. And I don't know about the others, I assume as educators, they're doing their research. As a mom, I'm doing mine too. So I just want you to be aware of that part, that we really do get all of your comments, all of your letters, all of your things. And we really do take this stuff to heart before we make choices like this for all of the children.
Thank you, Nicole. Anybody else want to make a comment?
I would just add to what Nicole has said, that there is no attempt to cloak, hide, or disguise anything that's going on in the district. The district's library website, the catalog is available for anyone that wants to search it. So if you have questions about what's contained in the district libraries, you're very welcome as a taxpayer to go to those websites and check out the catalog. I would also say that while what we are considering are physical items, through the state of Wisconsin, kids and adults and families have access to all kinds of digital content in the 21st century. And I can tell you, speaking as director of the public library, that we have about a quarter of our use coming from electronic media. So the idea that even if we were to make a unanimous decision to remove these objects from the collection, which isn't even being used as a mandatory reading thing, it's, as I understand it, it's an elected thing that the children would self-select. But even if we were to decide to pull these things in an effort to protect children, they have immediate access to these ideas with a flip of a phone. It's not something that can be shut off. The genie's out of the bottle. We have the internet, and it's utilized by educators in a thoughtful way. So there's that.
Emily?
Yeah, just kind of building upon that. So I'm a former K-12 educator, and then I now teach in higher education. I actually teach educators, teach teachers, and this is something that we talk about, how we're educating our future teachers in promoting, inclusivity and diversity topics so that they can teach students who have these backgrounds, right? So I just I did my own little research here too. So looking from the ACLU, American Civil Liberties, March and Labor 2022. So a lot of First Amendment talk here. Our First Amendment's religion clauses are vital to protecting religious freedom. The Establishment Clause protects against governmental endorsement and imposition of religion, and the Free Exercise Clause ensures the right to practice your faith without harming others, paragraph 1. The first clause of the First Amendment to our Constitution cites the separation of church and state. Avoiding compulsory taxpayer support for religion lies at the heart of the Constitution's religious liberty protections. In fact, James Madison, the principal author of the First Amendment, explicitly warned against taxpayer funding of religion, including religious education, because it would be the first step in allowing the government to force citizens to conform to the preferred faith of those in power, paragraph 2. With the rationale in support of removing these two texts from the Knapp Elementary School library and replacing it with the Bible, evokes Christianity, the preferred religion, and its teachings for why they should be excluded from the book collection. These rationales clearly contradict the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment with separation of church and state. If families are uncomfortable with Julian and Bug, as Jessica recommended, they can opt to have their children not check out those types of books. Or there's other educational opportunities that families might find that fit their better at Christian values and morals, such as private, parochial, home, and/or charter schooling. So removal of these texts is a form of censorship, as we've said before, which violates First Amendment rights. Just because one does not like or disagrees with content, specifically LGBTQIA+, does not have to constitute physical removal of the text. Since the school district of the nominee area is a public school funded by taxpayers, we must be inclusive and provide equitable education to all diverse backgrounds, no matter race, color, creed, and/or sexual orientation.
Well, that pretty much nails it. But Mrs. Pillman's heard that from me for months now. Any other comments? Brian?
I think one of the things that is important as we go through prior to making the decision on how we utilize resources and select resources are the policies that are in place to outline the objectives for selection and inclusion. And I think it is something that when we go through the process that we ensure, and I believe we are, that we follow our policy, and unless we are in violation of that, removal of books from our library is not something that I would see as well.
Any other comments? Okay, I am not a voting member of this committee, but at this time I would ask for a motion for a committee member to make a motion. Really the four options the committee has is to retain the material under reconsideration for general student use, to make the material available on a limited basis for a specific classroom use, make the material at a specific level, elementary, middle, or high school, or make the material under consideration no longer available in the district for general student use.
I would like to make a motion to retain the material under reconsideration for general student use.
Okay, so we have a motion by Jolene and a second by, was it Nicole? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion tonight? Okay, hearing no discussion, we'll take a roll call vote. Susan Thompson? Okay, so yeah, the motion is to retain the material under reconsideration for general student use, so you can either vote yes or no.
Yes.
Okay, so Susan, yes. Nicole? Mark?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Jenny?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Jolene?
Yes.
Okay, so it's unanimous that the material would be remain under reconsideration for general student use. Committee members, I'd like to thank you again for your time. Thank you for serving on this committee. I know it's not easy. Mrs. Pillman, I'd like to thank you for bringing your concerns and sharing the information that you did with us tonight. And everyone in the public, thank you for adding your voice to this process. And again, thank you for having such a cordial meeting, a real nice thing for our community. With all that being said, at this point, is there a motion to adjourn?
May I just make a comment of thanking the committee
Sure,
for
go
giving some of their thoughts. I asked they would do that, and I appreciate that they did. Thank you.
Very nice.
Also, point of order, the word cordial is a bit off considering several of us were called evil in the first 2 minutes of the presentation.
Thank you, but we're not gonna go there. But anyway, is there a motion to adjourn tonight?
So
All right, I'll declare the motion adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.